joining us now on the John Fredericks Radio Network, Trucking the Truth, Nan Hayworth. Nan is a doctor. She's an ophthalmologist. She's a former congresswoman from the state of New York, District 12. That got redistricted to District 18. And she is with us now, knows a little bit about what's going on right now in the halls of Congress. Dr. Hayworth, great to have you with us.
John, great to be with you. Thank you so much.
Now, I remember having you on several times during your re-election campaign. I think it was 2012, if memory serves me. All right, trying to go back. And I remember you were elected in one district, and then you got screwed, and they put you in some other district. And what was that? That was 19, 18 or something?
Well, interestingly enough, a federal magistrate actually drew the congressional district lines in New York in 2012 in that election cycle because the New York State legislators got hung up on a dispute among Democrats in New York City as to how to draw their lines. And that's how we ended up eventually with Representative Ocasio-Cortez. Strangely enough.
Now, are you any plans to see Nan Hayworth get back to Congress?
Oh, gosh, John, not from the state of New York, not unless I changed my residence.
Where are you now?
Honored to serve. I live in the same home I've lived in for 30 years, but our state is... certainly our district, it was a swing district, net Democratic when I ran, and became more so over the years.
Right.
Folks leave New York because they can't afford the cost of living here, and those who are so inclined tend to be the ones who vote Republican, I think. So
Nan, what is the geography of your former district? Like, tell us the area that you live in.
West Point, the U.S. Military Academy, is at the heart of the 19th Congressional District when I was serving it, now 18th District.
The Bear Mountain area.
Hudson Valley, yep.
Hudson Valley, Bear Mountain. What a beautiful area that is.
Oh, it absolutely is. And, you think about the amazing potential to do even better if we actually had a state government that didn't impose so much on its citizens and on its small businesses, on employers. You keep hoping that, folks will see the light and vote for representatives who lift some of those burdens. We've had not as much success as we'd like to.
So, Nan, well, first of all, you live and represent a beautiful area. I used to...
Thank you.
When my father was alive, he was in the Army, and I'd meet him in the Bear Mountain area. We'd meet for lunch or something, and I would go over the Tapansy Bridge in northern New Jersey, like go up to Garden State, and then go over the Tapansy. And I think they restructured it or something, but that was always such a beautiful drive.
Yeah, John, you're so right. The history of that bridge is fascinating in its own way. It's a 3-mile-long bridge because of a dispute between the New York State Bridge and Tunnel Authority and the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. So that makes it a very long bridge, and it was rebuilt a few years back. I was one of the folks who did help fight for some federal funding for that. Is a major interstate, and it's now the Governor Mario M. Cuomo Bridge.
Well, there you go. Speaking of Cuomo as governor, we're with Nan Hayworth. She's a doctor, ophthalmologist, also former congresswoman from New York, the Bear Mountain, West Point area. Congresswoman, let's get to Governor Cuomo yesterday saying that, hey, I don't care. Yeah. He said, I don't give a rat's tail what President Trump says. I only have the authority to open up New York. Governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, basically shut everything down, said you can't buy a flag or you can't grow a flower. I don't know what the hell's going on there, but let's get to, look, you were in Congress, you're a doctor. What is the plan in New York State, New York City? What's the plan?
Sure. Governor Cuomo has said it many times. He is particularly focused on the public health aspect, and that's understandable. President Trump has expressed as well the strongest desire to protect the health of Americans to the maximal extent. And of course, as you know, John, and we're seeing it across the country, there are risks and benefits to every action in medicine, of course, and in government. So we have tremendous economic hardships that are besetting our country because of the lockdowns that have been necessitated by social distancing. Governors have enormous power in that way to do what they feel will protect public safety in a state. The president has his own significant and substantive powers, but governors have enormous influence over what happens in their own states. And in the state of New York, we are significantly restricted right now. Not so much as in Michigan, where Governor Whitmer has apparently quite enjoyed being able to determine what's essential and what's not to sell in stores. But reopening the economy in New York, I think we're sort of the first wave of epicenter, quote unquote, in the country. So, we're going to depend very heavily on a lot of testing. And fortunately, the Trump administration, President Trump and his team have done incredible work to lift decades of barriers, regulatory and bureaucratic, working with industry, mobilizing industry to get ever more tests and therapeutic options developed as fast as possible. So we're going to need a lot of testing to see who's immune, because millions of Americans are going to be proving that they've had the virus and they've survived. And once you're immune for at least a year, and let's hope for much longer until we develop a vaccine, which we hope and pray will come within about a year. Even that is at warp speed. Once people are immune, then they're free and clear to, they can't infect anybody and they can't get infected. And for the rest of us to know what our what our infection status might be, even day to day, potentially is going to be very important in terms of public health, John. And it is, we are inventing, this is new territory. We're inventing new ways to deal with something that the world has never seen before. Certainly our country has never seen before, in an era when people expect to be able to go to work and live their lives much less burdened than this.
You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network, Trucking the Truth Across America. We're with former Congresswoman Nan Hayworth from the New York area. She represented Bear Mountain and West Point. She's also a doctor of ophthalmology. Nan, let's get to the governor, Cuomo, yesterday, saying that only he has the authority to reopen the state or get people back to work or whatever he's doing. But this is the same governor who got on TV every day and whined about he didn't have enough beds, got the beds, didn't need them, got on TV every day and whined, said I need 40,000 ventilators. We need 40,000 ventilators. We have to get 40,000 ventilators or people will die. They got him the ventilators, and now they're giving them away and they're stockpiled. If the president opens the country up, let's pick a date, May 7th, what happens?
Well, the president and the governors all have, significant roles to play. John, it is true that, on a constitutional basis, there is, the governors have a lot of power in states to determine measures that are meant to protect public safety. And you're absolutely right that Governor Cuomo and many other governors, but Governor Cuomo very prominently called on the federal government to provide significant assistance, indeed, to take over the effort in many ways. Right? Governor Cuomo said, you have to do the purchasing. You have to prevent states from, in Governor Cuomo's view, competing with each other. So on the one hand, yes, the federal government was expected to, asked to oversee materiel and resource distribution. But on the other hand, if President Trump says, "Look, as the chief executive of this great country, it is my very strong and considered opinion that now we have to do all we can to reopen our economy," I think the governors like Governor Cuomo have to turn around and say, "You know what? I'm going to work," and I hope they will. It in some sense, John, it has to be voluntarily on their part, if you will. But they have to say, "Yeah, you know what? I will work with this president." In a whole of government effort to get people to work again. We've got to do that.
What about schools?
Yeah.
When do we open schools, man?
Yeah. John. I think this school year, for most of the state of New York, probably is going to be completed without reconvening classes. But fortunately, thank God, children have not been manifesting deadly illness with this disease, but for rare instances. But we know they can be a source of infection, unfortunately for other people, for more vulnerable people. So it's going to be part of the whole public safety effort that's going to be ongoing, John. And we do want to see everybody get back into actually interacting with each other directly. But I think you are going to see some very significant testing and verification, programs, along with remarkable new levels of hygiene. And, of course, those will be welcome because they'll keep kids from getting a lot of other illnesses.
I mean, look, if there's anything good that came out of this, it is the focus now on hygiene. I know that Dr. Fauci, who I'm not a fan of, I think he ought to get fired. I can't stand the guy.
John,
because you like him because he's a New Yorker. I mean, come on, what's not to like? But he does remind me of the guy in the Little Caesars ad, Pizza. He is the Grim Reaper, and now he's saying you're not going to be able to shake hands for the remainder of time or something. I mean, the guy's like ridiculous. Coupled with the fact that, look, I know you like him, and that's fine, but I just played a clip of him in March 1 month ago saying nobody had to change anything. We didn't have anything to worry about. Then he runs over to CNN on Sunday and said, well, had the administration acted earlier, thousands of lives would have been saved. So the guy talks out of two sides of his mouth.
John, if I can offer this to you, having been, and you've emphasized it, and you're right. I'm a physician, and I've been in politics. And you know what happened? Because I heard the clips and things, and if you're not, you know what it's like, John, and you're a very talented person in media. A lot of these outlets will press and press and press. They'll press a hypothetical. Those of us who are particularly attuned to these things in politics will recognize that we just simply have to refuse to answer a hypothetical. And Dr. Fauci didn't, because he was answering as a scientist. He's like, well, basically, I mean, in so many words, John, you know this. He said, well, in 2020 hindsight, sure, if we'd shut everything down, starting when, you could take it back as sort of, reductio ad absurdum, if we'd shut everything down the minute we'd heard of this, then, would things have been different? Well, hypothetically, but it's a ridiculous question to keep asking. And he was not answering it as a politically savvy person. He was answering it, as someone who was trying to, provide, sure, a scientific answer, obviously to shut everything down. But here's the problem that we have, John, and you know this, that our knowledge of this virus is literally changing day to day. 3 months have gone by since we first heard of this. The first reports, China was lying about this disease. They lied about its spread. They've lied about their numbers. Any news outlet, John, and you've decried this, any news outlet that actually quotes the figures from China as definitive is propagating lies. But based on that was the evidence that our folks had, our CDC and our NIH, Dr. Fauci, had to go on. So the virus at first they thought looked like a SARS kind of virus, a very different model from this virus, which it turns out is extremely contagious. Now we know, and the ideas of its contagiousness change day to day. But we know it seems at this point it's extremely contagious. It's not what they thought it was initially. And everybody has acted. The president has a lot of voices, in the ultimate challenge, I think, for any chief executive in our history in terms of its magnitude and its severity and its swiftness. So he has a lot of different voices, this. And I think it's great because he is able to, everything the president says, he courts discussion. He courts a certain amount of controversy because he wants to get everybody thinking and talking and working on this problem. So now the next challenge is, okay, I want to open this economy again. I think we have to do this. Bring on your arguments. And they all are doing that.
What you just said makes a lot of sense to me, and it certainly it'll temper my criticism of Fauci, because like you, he's not a doctor and a politician. He's a doctor, but he's also a bureaucrat, part of the deep state, loves Clinton. So, look, I don't trust any of these people, but I do. I was done with Fauci when they asked him, well, when can we open the economy? And he said, when we're at zero. I mean, there's no country remaining. It was such an asinine response that I was done with the guy. But I see what you're saying. I'll grant you what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, I get it.
It's his public health response, and we have to hear that too. I mean, in one sense, he's right. But I would imagine that, and I wouldn't presume to speak for Dr. Fauci. But funnily enough, we both graduated at the top of our respective classes from Cornell Medical College, and I'm so honored to share that distinction with him. He is an amazing physician and scientist. But that, John, I got to tell you, that is the physician's answer. Now, obviously, we can't do that on a practical basis.
Right.
So how do we mitigate this disease? How do we convert it from lethal to survivable? And it's work of the sort that he is fostering, along with many other amazing people, both in government and outside of government, on the front lines of healthcare, in industry. In all these ways that President Trump has facilitated the response to this incredible crisis. Everybody is working on the kind of testing, the surveillance that we need, on the therapies that we need. Will it be hydroxychloroquine? Perhaps. Will hydroxychloroquine work better at certain stages of the disease than others? Yes, sounds that way, probably. If it works at all, we're going to find out. There are a lot of ways in which data are pouring in and being analyzed in unprecedented ways. The Oracle folks have come in to help with the data analysis. We've got remdesivir coming along. That's the Gilead molecule. We've got convalescent serum for people who are the most sick in the hospital. The way intensive care is being administered to these patients is changing. So there are so many moving parts, John, because, we really don't want to see folks dying from this disease. If we can, every death that we can prevent, every life is a miracle to be celebrated, and the effort that's being made is amazing too. But we need all these voices.
Nan Hayworth, I really want to thank you for your time. With an uplifting message, I'll also soften my position on Fauci. I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Thank you. Nan Hayworth, former Congresswoman from Bear Mountain, West Point, New York. Such a gorgeous area. And also an ophthalmologist. And Nan, we have to have you back.